As the war continues to rage in the air and on the ground in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin says he is still interested in having a negotiated settlement, but he is very clear on the sequencing of those things. There has to be talks first and then a ceasefire second. And the ceasefire would only happen once an agreement has been made. Meanwhile, we have a conflict on the United States side that still seems to be thinking that we can, quote, force Russia into a negotiated settlement that's beneficial to Kiev. We'll see who's actually has the better plan, who's more realistic and has a better chance of seeing it manifest on the ground. And we're going to try to assess some of this today with one of our popular guests, Andrei Martyanov, back again with us from, I forget, what city are you from?
Seattle. Near Seattle.
Near Seattle, yeah. So that's a good. Andrei, a veteran author, Russian military expert, the YouTube channel Smoothie X12. One of our go-to guys anytime we're talking about what the Russians are doing militarily, especially. And I just kind of want to get your off-the-cuff comments here, and we'll start off with the kind of the what's happening in the air. Russia has significantly increased the number of missiles and drones, especially the Garand-2s, that they've been firing on virtually every night, anywhere from 300 to 700, virtually every night. Last night's, I think, was just under 500 total air assets that were flown here. What do you make of that? And is that something that's going to increase, or is it just a sort of a spike?
No, it's a standard. The numbers are there. I don't know why CIA missed them, but Russia was producing actually 600 geraniums a day for a while now. So it's just geraniums. There are obviously all kinds of the assets such as Banderol, which is the small cruise missile, which has a range of 500 kilometers and at Mach 0.6. So which is carried by the other drones like strike drones. And so, yeah, it's in fact is probably the numbers will increase. In fact, is they are increasing, so Russia will be able, to hit Ukraine with about 1,000 units of any kind of the air assets. And this is not, cruise missiles of the strategic variety like X-30KH 101, 3M14 calibers from the Black Sea, and all kinds of hypersonic weapons such as Kinzhal, which was used tonight to eradicate another bunch of the Patriot launchers and radar, and all kinds of other things, including Zircon. So, yeah, variety. Iskanders, my gosh, it's a lot of Iskanders there, too. So, yeah, it's just pretty much standard. Russia can constantly adjust the level of pain, depending on how the West, and we're not talking about the obviously sovereignty of Ukraine. It is a complete outgrowth of NATO, essentially. So Russia will do it, depending on the level of pain NATO wants to endure. And this is Al Capone on principle. I mean, and I warned about it from the very start of the special military operation. You can get with the kind word and gun much further than you can get with the kind word alone. So evidently the West doesn't understand kind words. So there you go. That's the gun. And they will be hammering it until, they accept conditions, which Russians are, I don't know how many times, since 2021, Kremlin and repeated ad nauseam, non-stop. The conditions are known. It's, take it or leave it. And
this, Gary, if you can put that one with the missile tracks up on that photograph we have here. This is the picture of the last night, the 400 and some odd, or just under 500, which looks a pretty substantial thing, because it looks like Russia is pretty consistently attacking from those locations around the border, all the way across, both from the occupied territories as well as Russia proper in the north. And I think there was 3 main targets overnight. Now, the Ukraine side claims that, they're in this desperate need for Patriot air defense interceptors, that the United States has now said that we're going to release a lot more of those. They're going to give them more from NATO, et cetera. But last night, again, Ukraine claimed that they got almost every one of them. They claim they knocked down every cruise missile of all the different kinds, and all but 24 of the 400 some odd Garand-2s. What do you make of their claim?
Yeah, they also have the Ghost of Kiev guy who actually in the first couple of weeks of the special military operation shut down all of Russian Air Force. So I mean, sure, yeah, they usually shoot down 146% of all missiles Russia hurls on them. So, and this is how actually Pentagon. That's how Pentagon and CIA operate. This is the data they get, and yeah, sure. Whatever, I don't know why they. Ukraine will be the next, line of defense when the aliens from the planet Zoltar attack your Earth. That will be armed forces of Ukraine and their air defense, which will be shooting down those things. I mean, at this stage, I mean, anybody who takes that seriously, they have to have their head examined, So, but yeah, that's what American generals believe, So,
is there any way to have an accurate assessment, even a good ballpark figure of how many actually are getting shot down?
Very few. There are certainly some, but I would say at this stage, especially when essentially the suppression of the Ukrainian air defense, which is essentially NATO air defense, was rather complete. I don't know. They cannot shoot down OMPK, bombs such as FABs, with the guided bombs, which have now a range of 90 kilometers. So I mean, sure, but about 90% are getting through. And if you listen attentively, even to the work of the so-called Povitrenian defense, whatever the air defense, or rather what's left of it around Odessa or Kiev or anything, you don't even see any more the streaks of their, missiles. Yeah. They only have this AAA, anti-aircraft artillery, which is those, either Shilkas or 37 millimeter guns. Good luck shooting down anything with that, especially when you're talking about the high subsonic, let alone supersonic missiles like Onyx, or let alone hypersonic Zircon, which is being used from Crimea, for example. So yeah, but the point is it's propaganda, and we all know that they kill every day 100,500 Russian soldiers, while they lost just 40,000 in the last 3. Yeah, sure, that's what Trump believes. That's what Kellogg tells him. So, but Kellogg he doesn't understand basic arithmetic anyway. So, and as the result, we have this. Sure, I don't know even how you can comment on some delirium. You need to have the psychiatrist who needs to go there and kind of rationalize it from the professional point of view. From military point of view, anybody who buys this is just they are not professional, which we turned out to be. We know now the level of NATO military professionalism. So, yeah,
unfortunately, we're about to see some examples of some of those so-called experts in just a second. But when you take a look at the reported number that's about to come, and Zelensky himself last week said that his intelligence sources said that Russia would soon be able to not just manufacture, but also launch up to 1,000 projectiles per night, and possibly could even go more than that. So the question is, though, I mean, if let's say that you were off and really they're only shooting down half, which would still be a significant portion getting through. At some point, it seems like that many missiles getting through is going to have to cause some kind of degradation for the Ukraine armed forces to continue to sustain combat. Or is it a case like, say, like the bombing of Dresden or the bombing of London in the first part of World War II, where lots of things blow up, but it's not going to ever stop anybody from fighting? How do you see the air war, and what is it trying to accomplish?
Oh, no, it's degrading of the industrial potential. Russians do not bomb civilians unlike NATO. NATO loves to bomb civilians. So no, it's if you take a look at the results of even the last night, despite the fact that obviously SBU has the strict limitations, and actually they forbade to publish any kind of the photos or video, you have those photos and videos streaming from all over the place, from Kiev, from Odessa, from Kryvyi Rog, from Dnipropetrovsk. I mean, it's an industrial plant which is being demolished completely. So, and yeah, civilians go around to just shoot and those videos and photos because they know. I mean, they do know that they are not going to be attacked. Russians don't kill civilians. accidentally, sometimes sadly it happens, but this is not how it all works. And especially we're talking about 2025, not 1941. If you look attentively at all weapons which Russia used, they are all high precision weapons. They are all guided high precision weapons, and so they are guided by the GLONASS. They are all kinds of the correction during the flight. So these are very accurate weapons. Even the geraniums, well, not even geraniums, they are extremely high precision weapons. And so just tonight, in one of the former, now it doesn't exist, Kiev radio electronics plant, which was producing, by the way, all those drones for armed forces of Ukraine, 23 geraniums flew into one point, and yeah, the plant is not there anymore. You know, so it's very high precision weapons. It's not carpet bombing. It's not, you know, some kind of vengeance things. No, it's a completely different thing, not to speak about, well, basically degrading what's left. And now, well, Mr. Trump obviously has very difficult issues understanding of the table of organization and equipment. And when he said that there will be 17 Patriots, he didn't mean 17 Patriot systems. Batteries. No, he meant 17 launchers. So roughly split it by 3, roughly speaking, you know, so 6 launchers per probably single command and control center and a radar which can guide them. That's about it. This night, Russians blew up 6 launchers and 2 radar of Patriot. So yeah, it's all of those systems are now concentrated strictly around Kiev because they don't have them anymore to defend anything. Not that they are anyway effective. And so that's how it works. I mean, it's
so Ukraine has been doing this. I think you could go back to maybe November of 2023 to where there was a sustained effort by Russia to get this air campaign. And it's of course it's accelerated here in the last bit of this year. But how? I mean, obviously it hasn't knocked Ukraine out of the war. What is the actual objective of the air campaign for Russia?
Degrade any kind of rear services. Apart from the first, we have to understand very clearly 2 different things. There are obviously things which are related to the Air Force, what we classically understand as the Air Force. There is a combat line aviation, which is we would call close air support, and so it's Army aviation. Then there is, of course, strategic aviation and operational tactical aviation. So they do their job. They've been doing this since 2022. It's just a matter of their posture, or rather, you know, operational tempo, how they design it in order, obviously, to preserve as many planes as possible and lives of their of Russian pilots. And then, of course, there are all those, you know, unmanned assets. And so it operates in the concert, but the operations of the Russian Air Force are primarily concentrated primarily, especially combat aviation, which is, of course, we're talking about operational tactical, such as Su-34s, and, of course, the close air support. It's concentrated primarily along the line of the combat contact and into the tactical rear. So give and take about 50 kilometers down there where they have those assembly areas, and, you know, then a little bit into the operational depths. And then, of course, we have the air control. But unmanned, basically, assets, yeah, they are there to make sure that Ukraine doesn't have effective air defense, which it doesn't. As I already stated, most of those air defense complexes, be them whatever left of those Patriots and whatever they try to sneak in, and those NASAMS, which is really Frankenstein of a air defense complex, it's nothing more than AIM-120 MRAM stuck on the ground platform with some radar, and they say, oh my God, it's an amazing complex. It's not. But the point is that that's the only thing they have now. And they have this primarily around Kiev. The rest of it, listen to the flight of geraniums night after night after night. The only thing you can hear is those bursts of the AAAs. And that's about it. They have nothing. Russians annihilated pretty much. Well, again, we have to look at the larger picture. That's what many people do not want to do. They look at those explosions in the tactical level. Oh, yeah, I mean, which is important. I don't argue with that. But the point is, it's not about Ukraine. Ukraine is a virtual state which exists today solely on the support by NATO. It is about demilitarizing NATO. And the indicators, including for the United States, are already there, that it has been exhausted. And here we have this, the media circus and PR, basically, I don't know how to say it, it's panopticon. And that will continue until NATO has nothing left, which it's nearing that stage essentially. And after that, maybe somebody in Washington will say that, it's about time to sit at the table.
and that's where I want to go. That's where I want to go next, because that's what's happening in the Russian in the air. We could talk a lot about what's happening on the ground. I don't want to spend a lot of time other than the offensive continues on, especially in areas like the Pokrovsk area, Konstantinivka, Zaporizhia, Kupiansk, assuming even Kharkiv, and now in the Dnepropetrovsk. I never can say that word. Dnepro. Right. So there's continuing that's going on. So all this is going in concert. Meanwhile, to your point here, the West has not yet got to that point to where they think, all right, our stockpiles are getting dangerously low. There's no outcome on the ground that's going to be beneficial to us. Let's have a negotiation. Instead, here's the view from Brother General Jack Keane just yesterday.
I think the president demonstrated extraordinary patience in trying to work with Putin, despite all the happy talk and playing tough on a battlefield that was going on for weeks and weeks, and then ultimately completely frustrated with him. And Putin wanted that to happen, but he thought the president would likely pull away from supporting Ukraine. And so Putin has miscalculated here. And what we got here is clearly the president's decisiveness to support Ukraine. There's still arms flowing right now from the previous administration and the Congress's support for funding that took place many, many months ago. So that is happening. It paused for a while, but this week, 155 artillery ammunition is flowing again because of the president's order. 2 PAC-3 missiles for the Patriot system flowing again, and HIMARS long-range missiles flowing again.
Now, he mentioned in there a pause. I had a conversation with some folks just right before the show, as a matter of fact, who have some knowledge about things that are going on in the administration. And the information that I can relay anyway is basically that the U.S. paused it here recently because there were some in the Pentagon that realized we are below our minimum threshold for our stockpile, so that we said, all right, we can't do any of that. So then they came up with this new plan that will, all right, we're not going to get rid of our stuff anymore. We're going to take stuff that we had been creating or building for other partners elsewhere in the world, others in Europe, and we're going to now redirect that to Ukraine, so that when Jack Keane's saying, all this stuff is flowing, well, it's more like trickling, because there's just not that much of it. And as you pointed out, it's not having that big of an impact. But do you think, this is a silly question to even ask, but I'll just ask you because he mentioned it, did Putin miscalculate and make a bad decision because now Trump's turned back on the spigot?
There is not a single American general in Pentagon or admiral who understands what strategy is. They are illiterate hacks, many of them. They never read Svechin. So for them to, they have business plans and PowerPoint presentations. That's about as far as it goes. They didn't study Russian. They don't know Russian history. They don't know military history. Most of the American officers are ignorant on the realities of the 20th century warfare, except for, obviously, nothing personal, obviously, of the Gulf War. And so when they talk about it, they have no clue about anything. Jack Keane is basically the ignoramus. Russians have this meme. It's called British scientist. I mean, британские ученые, British scientists. And the meme basically is about that thing. For example, I give you one of the examples of the headlines they use. British scientists conducted their 5-year-long study, and they established the scientific fact that the water is wet. So we pretty much now there is a new meme now circulating, American generals. Jack Keane wouldn't be allowed to command battalion in the modern warfare. And so they do not understand economic, strategic, historical, cultural, all other things. they have zero understanding about Russia. And the fact is, look at me. I'm Exhibit A. I made my career as a writer, as an analyst, who turned out to be most of the time correct. Not always. I make my own mistakes. I do not try to pretend that I am infallible. I, sometimes screw it up. But the point is, I made a career on the simple premise, which I preach for a second decade. There is no Russian experts in the United States, period. Not in CIA, not in Pentagon, not in DIA, and I present. These guys have no clue. They are the products of the fraud, academic fraud, which is a US Ivy League humanities degree and all those programs. And as a result, they get into the things. They do not understand how resources play the main fundamental factor in the strategy and developing both grand strategy of the state and strategy for the military. Did they study World War II? No. They studied World War II only about from MacArthur. The best that they could do Eisenhower, and they call Eisenhower boring, broad front strategy. He wasn't our pattern. He would have gotten to Moscow, beat those Ruskies. Yeah, so people have issues with arithmetics. Forget about math. Forget about algebra, calculus. Forget about theory of operations. Mr. Donahue, the guy now who is in charge of the American forces, in a supreme commander in Europe. The guy planned the counteroffensive in 2023, which Russians, just laughing out loud. And the guy, his staff, they couldn't even plan this properly. They don't even understand what operational art is. Forget about operations, which is the hard science, probabilities, things of this nature. Operational art, they're not studied. There's rigid templates. That's the only thing they do. Keane, all those people in Washington, they are absolutely ignorant about Russia because I wrote 4 books about that, how they got it so wrong.
Well, and if I could just unfortunately add one more example, I'm sorry, it's going to be painful to your ears, but next thing that Jack Keane talked about yesterday was how he's going to force Putin into a peace to
absolutely. Yeah.
We're in a much better position here in dealing with Mr. Putin and attempting to get him to a negotiating table. And clearly what he's been doing, so our audience also understands this. The reason why he's pounding these cities, he wants to break the will of the Ukrainian people so they put pressure on the Zelensky government to make major concessions to Putin at the negotiating table. The people in Ukraine, if you polled them today, they would tell you they would like the war and through positive negotiations that are favorable to Ukraine. They don't want the war to end at their expense that favors Putin. They would rather fight on than do that.
When he said that last part there, it reminded me of the joke he just told about 5-year study determined that water was wet. He says, it turns out that this poll showed that the Ukraine people would rather have an outcome that's to their advantage. Well, yeah, no kidding. Can they do it? That's the big question, and I think you have a different answer.
Yeah, well, let's start with the simple thing. How many people Jack Keane's family lost to war? Not a single American serviceman ever lost a family, property to war. United States military doesn't know what continental warfare is. It's a good expeditionary force, which of course relatively easily can beat some third world, military. But in terms of the understanding of the impact of real warfare, what is known as continental warfare, Jack Keane is simply ignoramus. So, how many operations did he win? 0. So, and here's the guy who is a sore loser. He has the, axe to grind for Russians, especially considering the fact that he's member of the board of the Kagan Fraudulent Institute for Unstudy of War. There are a bunch of the cretins there, So, he has issues. He's outraged, he's desperate to, give it to Ruskies, just to maybe, I don't know, he's old man. He should retire and just shut up, for crying out loud. But you have people who not only do not understand what real continental warfare is, they're utterly incompetent in general military terms as applies to the strategy. And again, just to give you an example, they would wonder why Russians produce 600 geraniums a day. This is almost 220,000 a year. And obviously it's ramping up, and there are other assets. They don't understand that Russia produces own composite materials. Russia produces 7 times more of five and a half, I believe, latest, more aluminum than the United States produces. But those people don't read those numbers. They know how to make profit on Wall Street and capitalization of Apple, which is produced primarily in China. So, and as the result, they have no grasp of this. They believe that you can, like Mr. Trump, on the 4th of July, he told Zelensky, why are you sitting in the fence? Why don't you go on the fence? Oh, it's so easy. 3 echelons, the echelon of breakthrough, which usually dies in the security zone, then, the echelon of the exploitation and things like that. But come on, he was in the boarding school for boys, as he himself stated, 2016. This is more than enough to know about military, so yeah, sure, let's throw away all those cadre military people who have understanding of what is going on. So, and he tells Zelensky, just go on the offensive. Zelensky said, and he asked, of course, this question, can you hit Moscow? Oh, if you give me the weapons. So, well, yeah, and, Russians already responded to that too. But yeah, it's just the way it is. I mean, he watches Fox. We know that. Plus, he has this issue with Epstein files. And so he has a lot of on his plate, to put it mildly. So, and as a result, these are the people who surround him. And as the result, well, we have what we have. And it's going to be like this until basically, yeah, there's nothing left, as you correctly stated. Minimal stocks, I mean, the untouchable stocks, so to speak, are reached. Yeah.
You talk about people that are surrounding Trump, and part of the reason for his misinformation. There was, I had a picture a couple of days ago, I think may have been on the 4th of July, that Trump went golfing with Lindsey Graham, had some pictures of him, and Graham's talking about a lot of stuff about these sanctions, right? He went on CBS News, I guess a week ago Sunday, and was talking about a bunch of smack that Trump was going to do. Turns out he didn't do those things, didn't go that far. But that's not stopped Lindsey Graham, because he's trying to come up with a good way right now to get Trump to, quote, kick Putin's ass. Watch this.
Oh, yeah.
Putin wants to recreate the former Soviet Union, the Russian Empire. He wants to take countries that are not his. In the mid-90s, Ukraine gave up 1,700 nuclear weapons with a promise that their sovereignty would be respected by Russia. Putin broke that promise. He's not going to stop until somebody makes him stop. So Trump has been tough on Iran, who is incredibly dangerous, but they're in a weakened state. And Putin, your turn is coming. Donald Trump is the Scotty Scheffler of American politics and foreign diplomacy, and he's about to put a whooping on your ass. What's going to happen here is that Trump is going to impose tariffs on people that buy Russian oil. China, India, and Brazil, those 3 countries buy about 80% of cheap Russian oil. That's what keeps Putin's war machine going. So President Trump's going to put 100% tariff on all those countries, punishing them for helping Putin.
Okay, come on, a couple things to comment on there, but let's start off with the premise that but Donald Trump is going to put a whooping on the ass of President Putin. How do you see that?
It's Lindsey Graham. First, I mean, what's the deal with the 3 gauzy hairdo? He looks like a freaking cucumber. It's unbelievable. So, I mean, that's Fox News. Yeah, and no, it's Lindsey Graham. The guys are covered, obviously. And if fine people of South Carolina continue to elect this cretin, I mean, it just merely, it puts the stain on their reputation. And so he is a warmonger covered. He ran away at some point of time. There is even the video of this from Russian TV station. It was the 2015 or 2016. He just ran away. They say, why do you want to kill Russians? And something like that. So, well, yeah, he can talk whatever he wants. Let them, so, and what can I say? Well, it's, you saw yourself what kind of friends Mr. Trump has. So, and yeah, his presidency is done pretty much.
Well, so let's look at the second thing he talked about there toward the end, that at the end of this 50 days, which is going to be sometime in September, I think, when it officially expires, that he's going to have these 100% tariffs on China, India, and Brazil, and that is going to flip things around, and then Putin's really going to understand what's what. What say you?
Well, obviously, he doesn't understand real economy. He understands the insider trading and how to defraud people. He understands that, and how to take bribes from military-industrial complex. That's clear. He doesn't understand the basic economy, and that he doesn't understand the economy of Russia. That actually the trade with the hydrocarbons constitutes about 17% of Russian budget. But you cannot explain to Lindsey Graham how Russia actually prospers on other things. And he basically, if Trump introduces 100%, it's going to hit United States really painfully. So, but evidently those people do not understand the principle of the boomerang. And they, as I already stated, they don't understand that United States
Let's look at the one part of that first of all. If you could kind of help us understand what's at stake here and what would likely happen. Let's look first of all at China. If Trump attempted to say, "Hey, all right, 50 days come up, Putin didn't do what I want, 100% tariff on China for any imported petroleum products," what would happen?
Nothing. China already imports. There will be actual acceleration of the other pipe, both gas and oil pipe, which already one exists to China. It's in the continent. United States has no relation to it. And so, yeah, they can continue to pretend whatever they want. And of course, there is a lot of ways around it, as it always was. But the problem is, oil already is being traded in rubles and yuans. So the petrodollar is, for all intents and purposes, is on the way out. So if Trump wants to accelerate that, he certainly will. And then the United States will be without one of its main weapons, which is still diminishing as we speak. It's, of course, petrodollar, or basically the dollar tied to the oil trade. And so, well, I mean, what do you think the gigantic economy, which is much larger than American, Chinese economy will think about those tariffs? China needs energy, big time. And obviously, they have this neighbor to the north, which can give them energy the way they need for sustaining their economy and their growth. They posted, I believe 2 days ago, I read it, it's 5.6% growth. They will continue to grow. It's just the way it is. And especially now that they have to essentially concentrate even more on the internal market. So they don't care. You know, there was this idea that, this BRI Belt and Road Initiative, and they have to deliver things which they're already doing to Europe and from Europe. Well, Europe is becoming paupers. So, I mean, no matter how Trump plays all that, it's all end up with Russians continuing to deliver their energy to whoever decides this. Well, India may just jump off the cliff which they didn't give yet indications of that, but China will continue to do what it wants. And the fact is, Chinese know in geopolitical sense that their special military operation is essentially a blessing for them, because it keeps NATO completely tied, United States completely tied and being demilitarized, because obviously the main basically shift, which was announced during Obama administration, was towards China. And the United States wants some kind of hostility, some kind of the war, maybe a warm war with China. And Chinese know this. And Chinese are extremely vulnerable to all that. So, but there is no way they can reject or deny Russian energy. Just no way. And of course, Chinese already reacted that, screw you, basically.
And what extent does this even the threat of these tariffs going on these other three countries that were mentioned accelerate the move towards BRICS and away from the Western economies?
Well, it's already happened. It's fait accompli. It's just a matter of the arrangement stage for the institutions of BRICS. And yeah, it will merely just push countries even closer economically, what is happening, and especially in terms of the Southeast Asia, where China actually believes to expand its trade away from the U.S. trade. Some people forget that even 10 years ago, Chinese trade with the United States was in trillions. Now it's down to, hundreds of billions, and it's going to be diminishing. So despite the fact that the United States depends very much on the products made in China, and so Chinese are really working on the Southeastern Asia markets, there is a gigantic country like Indonesia, for example, with more than 200 million people. It's more than two-thirds of population of the United States. It's a developing market. You look at all kinds of places there, ranging from Vietnam to Malaysia to what have you, So you begin to count them together, and suddenly you look at like, oh, it's like 1.5 billion people additionally to additional market from China. So there you go. You have 300 million people, 330 in the United States. And it used to be a solvent market. Americans used to be, very capable of paying things. Not anymore. The things are tightening up big time, and they will continue to tighten up. And it's just the development of the financial capitalism, which essentially strangles productive economy, which it did in the United States, which got deindustrialized and now demilitarized. Chinese and Russians know that. The Indians know that too. And so any attempts to play this tough guy when you don't have any, pardon my, pun is unintentional here. When you don't have any Trump cards actually on your hand, so what are you gonna do? And there's only bullying,
on the one hand, you might think that Russia would say, okay, fine, screw it. We're just going to go this way. We're not even going to listen to America. But as Dmitry Peskov said yesterday, they're still quite willing to talk to America.
Oh, no, it's absolutely. Russians never said that they will not.
No, Gary.
Разумеется, все-таки президент Трамп – это президент крупнейшей страны мира, крупнейшей экономики мира. И плюс, уже все привыкли, так сказать, к его достаточно жесткой и прямолинейной риторике. Вместе с тем он подтверждает свои намерения дальше делать все возможное для того, чтобы способствовать мирному регулированию. Собственно, президент Путин неоднократно говорил о своем желании как можно быстрее перевести украинское регулирование в мирное русло. Это длительный процесс, он требует усилий, он непрост. И, скорее всего, в Вашингтоне все больше и больше это понимают.
But then he also said in that same conversation there that, we're happy to talk, but, the whole thing, core issues here, because this is what I want to discuss a little bit about right here, is that there is a partial discontinuity between Russia and the United States in terms of discussions. Because I think there's a sequencing issue. This is what I understand from talking to some folks with connections to the Pentagon and the White House, that Trump really does want to see the war come to an end. He really does want to see the killing stop. But he is fixated on this thing that the ceasefire has to happen first, and then the talks. And then the Russian sides are unequivocal. There can be talks, and then a ceasefire only after an agreement is made, and we're not going to switch those two. But is there any way to try and bring those two things closer together to where there's a negotiated settlement?
No. We have to understand, Trump's sequencing is not because of his goodwill and his proclaimed desire to stop killing. He is doing fine with Gaza genocide, so he supports his body, or rather curator, the guy who pulls his strings, Mr. Netanyahu. No. It has nothing to do with humanitarian reasons. Trump is a showman, and he doesn't care how many, let's put it this way. If Russia disappears tomorrow, Trump will be just happy. No. This sequencing on part of Trump has reasons. It was created based on some grounds, in whatever, mental, intellectual, if you can call it that, grounds that it's not about ceasefire and stopping killing. It's about extricating the United States on its own condition from the war to which the United States not only the party, but inspired it. United States is instigator of this attack on Russia, and so he wants to do it on his terms. It's not going to happen. So this gap cannot be breached. It's, as I already stated, Russians have been for 3.5 years non-stop. One thing is same over and over and over. We address root causes. Here's the situation on the ground. Then we discuss, we fix it, then we go and discuss the rest of it, including possible ceasefire. But reality is, as Mr. Zhou Enlai, the premier of China in 1954, stated, and he rephrased the famous Clausewitzian dictum that the war is the continuation of the politics of by other means. Zhou Enlai correctly stated that diplomacy is continuation of the war by other means. And Russians' diplomacy in this case, in Russian case, is subservient to military political aims of the conflict. And military political aims of the conflict are a removal of the root causes of what have happened. And Russia was actually, well, suffering, if you wish, since 1990s, when it became, basically it was destroyed by the collapse of the Soviet Union, and it was extremely weak. And of course, it has the treasonous government by Yeltsin. So, and that's why when Lindsey Graham talks about restoration of the Soviet Union, this idiot should learn about how Russians want to restore it. Overwhelming majority of Russians do not want to do anything with those Middle Asian or Caucasus republics, and they don't want freeloaders. Russians never lived as well as they do today. And when they were the part of the Soviet Union, and they had to maintain all those, Limitrovs and their fringes, and as the result, Russia essentially just exhausted itself. Russians do not want empire, and Russians want markets, which is normal. Hey, come on, Russians are not communists. They are, capitalists. They want also to make money, and they are making money. In fact, is on many things they are making killing. So, and that's what is this at stake. So Mr. Trump can pretend whatever he wants. It's not about sequencing. It's about the strategic aim of the, and again, he is very illiterate man in terms of military. And probably some people are, even in Pentagon, they do not understand the little thing that even if you get somehow 30 days of ceasefire, as Mr. Kellogg, who is also militarily illiterate, thought, oh, you get this 30 days, and then you can kind of extend it. And the idea is to extend this ceasefire that somehow NATO can rearm, regroup, draft whatever the force to continue to do what is the main political objective for the United States and NATO. It's annihilation of Russia. It's conducting the war on Russian people. And again, you cannot explain to Kellogg, to Keane, to Donahue, who never studied World War II. They don't understand how Russians are brought up and why it is not paranoia, because obviously, well, I don't remember, as I already stated, was there any Manstein attack on Boston? I don't remember the siege of Chicago, and strategic bombing of Chicago. Those people live in this deluded world of Hollywood. They don't understand this is damn serious. And so for Russians it is, and they still think that for some reason, many of them, especially neocons, which are dumbest ilk of them all, I would obviously use General Tommy Franks' quote on Mr. Fight, who is the stupidest effing son of a bitch on the planet Earth. That's what Tommy Franks spoke about it. And so when you talk to those people, they live in a complete echo chamber. They do not understand the reality of what is happening around them.
So let me ask you this. There is a line of thinking in some in the West that Russia has no intention and no interest in negotiations at all. They're just going through this to go through the motions to make it look good around the world, et cetera. But they're solely focused on the ground and fighting. Meanwhile, I had a guest on earlier today, a Russian journalist, who said, no, Russia genuinely is interested in negotiation. And if they can accomplish their ends without continuing to fight, they would be able to do so. And along those lines, we actually have a comment here from one of our viewers, Lex Friedman. You may know him. Certainly, a lot of people do. He says he's asking you, when do you think the peace talks will likely happen, and how long from now? Because I did see just before we came on the air here today that apparently Zelensky is also saying, hey, we could be talking as early as this week.
They will be meeting in Istanbul again. But the question, again, this is what the thing... It doesn't matter how you negotiate, and as Joe in line quote applies fully. Russians will have to achieve certain military political objectives on this. This is not to say that Russians want to actually rule all of the Ukraine, but if you listen attentively to what Mr. Putin was using, including Mr. Medvedev and others, they constantly talk about this Malorussia. Look up the map of the Malorussia. That's what Russia will get. A map of Malorussia, of course, it's what Catherine the Great added to Russian Empire. in 18th century. And this is those great, Tavrida type cities like Odessa or Nikolaev, which were built by Count Potemkin and others. So that's what is this at stake. The rest of it, the rest of Ukraine can go to hell, but it will never have now army. It will have the police, which will be properly armed. But yeah, there are certain things which needs to be addressed. But in the end, as I already stated, grand strategic objective is to deindustrialize NATO in order for Europe not to even think as they proposed, like by 2030 we're going to be able to go against at war with Russia, in order for Russians not to use Oreshnik and to turn all those European capitals into the parking lot. So that's the idea. It's a grand strategic idea. The rest of it, they are details. They are important details. But December 2021, Russian Defense Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, it's clearly stated what is at stake. And I don't know how can I add more to that, because obviously we constantly have this media circus, people saying, "Oh, when will this, negotiations happen?" Even Peskov answered, it's a long way to Tipperary, so it's a long way away, and so many things have to be achieved. But in the end, if you ask me, and basing on what Joe Enlai says about diplomacy, Russians there to pull the guns as long as it takes until all objectives are met. And
and in fact, speaking of negotiations, Gary, if you can play just a second that Zelensky comment we had, because he is talking about, we want to have some negotiations, but his objectives are a little different than the Russian ones you just mentioned.
Yeah, he wants ceasefire. That's the only thing he wants.
Yes, sorry, Gary. We got a soundbite to play here. Gary's pulling that up.
Okay.
Також на американському напрямку. Доповів, що запропонував російській стороні наступну зустріч на наступному тижні. Переговорну динаміку треба збільшувати. Треба робити все, щоб досягти припинення вогню. І російській стороні треба перестати ховатись від рішень. Обмін полонених, повернення дітей, припинення вбивств. І потрібна зустріч на рівні лідерів, щоб реально забезпечити мир.
Now, of course, he never explains what his definition of a lasting, just ceasefire is, other than something that's beneficial to Kiev, which he's genuinely not even articulated. So we don't even know what that is. But when he's mocking Putin and saying, he has to come to me and talk to me, etc., obviously that's never going to happen. So then what is the real state of affairs if they meet in Istanbul later this week?
Well, there will be discussion of change of the West. We know that this channels, Russians will try to get as many POWs from Ukraine, because they violate every rule of the humanitarian rights. So the form of the torture people there is all human. Zelensky is a war criminal, so he can say whatever he wants to, and he's.
Sorry, I think we might have lost Andre there. Looks like we had some signal issues. We'll see if we can.
We'll try to get him back, Danny. He's gone for the moment, but we're working on getting him back.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get that back here. But that does show that there is this vast gulf that remains between how the Russians see a negotiated end, how Zelensky sees a negotiated end, and how Donald Trump sees a negotiated end. And those things continue to move further and further apart. And it's, you tell me if you disagree with me, Andre, but it seems to me that the only thing that's going to predominate now is when you have one side viewed piece like this, another one this, another one over here. Those can't be reconciled. So the only thing that's going to matter is what happens on the ground and who can compel the other side to comply. Do you see it any differently?
No, the same way, yeah. It's not about this. No, there will be this ballet, diplomatic ballet. But again, in the end, it's about annihilation of the Kiev regime. and demilitarizing NATO. You know, it's simple as that. I mean, it's you have to distill it down to this, you know, the pure thing. And then, of course, all this talk about peace negotiations, it's like, you know, the famous joke meme, Sun Tzu, of course, he never said this, but Sun Tzu, if the moment you begin to win overwhelming victory, you must stop and negotiate the ceasefire. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, those people live in the, anybody who talks about the peace, there will be peace only on Russian conditions, and simple as that. And Russians don't kill civilians, they kill whatever the cannon fodder they throw into Russian meat grinder, and you know, Russians are totally content with their kill ratios, to put it mildly. And now you have Le Monde today, this globalist, you know, this from Paris, rag, you know, newspaper. It's kind of, you know, French New York Times, if you wish. So they say, oh my God, there's not enough space for on cemeteries in Ukraine. Yeah, they literally ran out of the places in cemeteries. They're now planning to do new, you know, kind of developments, because you can look it up. Visually, it's stunning. Hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of the graves. And so, you know, Russians are doing everything they need to do to make sure, because Putin has behind him 150 million Russians and almost 10 million, or actually Belarusians. So it's 160 million people Putin wants to ensure they never experience the war again. And he will achieve this, you know. Yeah, this is not the most impressive. You can take a look at what is happening around Kharkov or Dnipropetrovsk. Good Lord, there are many kilometers, many square kilometers of there. So what can I say? It's war. West wanted it. It's all about that. It's all about the spasm, so to speak, and King's convulsions combined West is experiencing right now, with the 500 years of its domination coming to an end. Then again, Russians have been in the business of beating the, pardon my French, the excrement out of the West since, 11th century. You know, it was nonstop. Invasion after invasion after invasion. Today we have the completely different technological paradigm, with Russia absolutely dominating nuclear weapons, and so making sure that, yeah, there is peace, there is calm, and Russia will continue to do this, and there will be calm.
It's so ironic. We had we interviewed a pro-Ukrainian journalist last week, and he was advocating for the continued fighting and the continued funding and all this. And I asked him point blank, I said, well, when you do just a unemotional military analysis between the balance of power between the two sides, you can't overcome the gulf. It's too big on the Russian side. So to continue to fight, instead of having a negotiated settlement, which is how I pitched the question, I asked him, would they ever consider having a negotiated settlement and somewhere near, like right now, as opposed to fighting further? And he said, no, they wouldn't even consider that, which is kind of what Zelensky was saying there is also. And I said, yeah, but what you're doing by fighting like that means that you will lose more people, lose more territory, and have more cities destroyed. In the end, Russia will just take what it wants. And I said, what about how do you view those two things? And he said, we'll just keep fighting anyway. And we're basically hoping for a miracle. So we just want to worry about getting through today. And even when I pointedly said, well, then you're condemning yourself and your country to even bigger defeat, he couldn't mentally get past that. And he's like, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know how you deal with that, other than you just have to keep prosecuting the war, I guess.
Well, they will, you saw yourself, you know this, and it's well documented, even on Ukrainian side. They're kidnapping people, 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds. Now they have 70-year-olds in the, you know, being kidnapped on the street and thrown into the meat grinder. So Russians oblige. What can I say? I mean, this is serious business. This is not those funny, you know, business of, you know, bombing the crap out of some people who will throw their hands in surrendering like Saddam's army. No, this is absolutely different type of things. It's different level. And again, people have to keep in mind, they have to be literally repeated ad nauseam. It is not about Ukraine. People ask, does Russia want to do this big offensive? Can Russia do it? Oh, absolutely. Any minute now. And I can tell you more than this. It can do it on several operational axes. And nothing will help them. But the point is, you can take a look at some of my acquaintances. Well, let's not go there. But one of the things like Russians do, I can send you the photo. They have like, okay, the density of the fire is increasing. Why should we throw our guys under this fire? We'll try suppress it. Okay, they hide, but still intensity is high. They usually use obviously drones and some remnants of artillery. So what did they do? They just dug out the tunnel. And I'm talking about the tunnel which can take T-90 tanks. I can show you the photo. They just dug they shoved their battalion, a motor rifle battalion. They got out, on the surface from the behind and killed everybody. So that's how you do it. Your Russian losses, well, couple of wounded. That's about it. So why would you kill your own soldiers when you can do it all day long? And that's the thing. You cannot explain to any senator or congressman, except for people of the level of Thomas Massie or maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, what they are dealing with economically. A Russian economy is a monster. And again, many people still do not understand. A Russian military-industrial complex is still not firing on all cylinders if, God forbids, Russia will go into the mobilizational type of economy, which Russians can do, and they will sustain it. Then you will have, 3.5 million of well-armed, well-trained troops who would just, Russia do not need Europe. Russians do not want Europe, in fact. Many people who say, you go after Paris or Berlin, which are dumpsters. They go to Moscow, St. Petersburg, or any Russian city, and they're stunned. It's safe, it's clean, it's excellent services and things like that. And they do not understand this. They are so dumb. Those graduates and those Russian experts from all kinds of, those Ivy League school, they have no clue. They have no clue because most of those programs are downright academic fraud, with the exception, of course, of the learning Russian language. They can speak Russian, which is not enough. I lived in the United States for more than 30 years. It was on the second decade of my living when I started to really get the in culture, in a sense that I've been acquainted with American culture, but it took me to understand some of it I loved dearly, and I still love, in American national character, things of this nature. When you begin to understand things on the ground level up, these people have no clue.
Yeah. It's true. It truly is. And that understanding is necessary to get any kind of an understanding of how any kind of a conflict needs to come to an end, or you're left with just brute power and destruction. And